Well, here we are, the end of season 1, which feels a little surreal to say out loud because it doesn't feel like that long ago I was mapping this whole thing out, wondering whether anyone would actually want to come with me into haunted buildings, heavy histories, paranormal theory, and the occasional emotional spiral about what places might hold on to after people are gone. Turns out, yes, you did, which I'm very grateful for. I've also spent a fair amount of this season voluntarily putting myself in unsettling locations and then acting shocked when they feel unsettling. So clearly I've learned a lot about the paranormal and absolutely nothing about self-preservation.
Take flight in the dark.
Welcome back to Deathly Curious Australia. I'm your host Monique. For this season finale, I didn't want to do another case breakdown or another full haunted location deep dive. I just wanted to sit down and talk about what this season has actually left with me, because the more I've thought about it, the more I've realised it changed the way I looked at haunted places. I haven't come out the other side with all the answers. If anything, I've probably ended up with more questions than I had when I started. But I do feel clearer on why certain places stay with me and why I keep coming back to this subject in the first place. When I first started planning what some places leave behind, I knew I wanted the season to centre around haunted places. But I also knew I didn't want to approach them like every strange moment had to become a dramatic headline. That's never really how I see this world. What interests me is the overlap, the point where history, emotion, memory, trauma, and spirit all start brushing up against each other. That's where it gets interesting to me, because I don't think every experience comes from the same source. A location can feel heavy because of what happened there. It can feel emotionally charged because people have carried fear, grief, or suffering through that space. And then there are those moments that feel different again, the ones that feel responsive, aware, personal. That's the part I keep coming back to. There's a difference between walking into a place and thinking, this feels sad, and walking into a place and getting that very distinct sense that something in it knows you're there. I felt both. And the more time I spend in places like that, the less comfortable I am pretending it all fits neatly into one explanation. A lot of the locations we've explored this season are tied to loss, violence, isolation, confinement, grief, places where life didn't unfold gently and where people left under awful circumstances. You can feel that in some buildings. You can feel it in the atmosphere before anyone else tells you a single detail about the history. That doesn't automatically mean every reaction is paranormal. But I don't think it's useful to swing too far the other way either and treat every experience as imagination, nerves, or a trick of the environment. Some moments feel like the emotional imprint of a place. Others feel far more direct than that. That's where my own thinking has shifted. I absolutely believe that places can hold emotion. I think trauma changes a space. I think grief leaves a mark. I think fear can cling to a building long after people involved are gone. I also believe spirit can remain. Not in every location, not in every story, and not in a way that always looks dramatic from the outside. But I do believe there are moments where what you're dealing with is more than atmosphere. It's in the response that lands too cleanly. It's in the sense of presence that won't budge. It's in that feeling of connection that makes you stop and think, no, this isn't just a sad building. There's someone here. That's probably one of the biggest things this season clarified for me. I'm less interested now in trying to force one answer into every haunting and much more interested in the shape of the experience itself. What was felt, what changed in the room, what stayed with the person afterwards. Did it feel residual? Did it feel intelligent? Did it feel emotional, environmental, spiritual, or some combination of all those things? I don't think haunted places are all doing the same thing. Some feel like they're echoing what's happened there. Some feel as though they're carrying the emotional residue of the people who passed through them. And some feel active in a way that's much harder to explain away. That's why I don't think the paranormal can be separated from human experience. Once you strip away the dramatic language and the horror movie version of it, what you're left with is still very human. You're left with fear, you're left with grief, you're left with memory, and you're left with people trying to understand why a place affected them so strongly, or why an experience has stayed with them years after it happened. That's what keeps drawing me back. The other thing I've noticed this season is that I trust my own instincts more than I used to. Not blindly. I still question things. I still think context matters. I still think there are plenty of times where there's a practical explanation sitting right in front of us, and we don't need to turn every odd noise into a supernatural event. At the same time, I've stopped brushing past those moments where a place feels distinctly active rather than simply uncomfortable. There's a difference. A room can feel oppressive because of its history. A location can feel eerie because you know what happened there. And every now and again, something shifts in a way that feels much more direct than that. And your body knows it before your brain has even caught up. That kind of experience doesn't always make for the most dramatic story afterwards. It might not be flashy. It might not be something you can prove to anyone else, but it stays with you. And if I've taken one thing from this season, it's that the quieter moments are often the ones that matter most. Not because they're easier to explain, usually the opposite, but because they're the moments that keep circling in your head long after you've left the building. I think that's also why I wanted to make this podcast the way I did. I wasn't interested in creating a space where every story had to end with a neat conclusion, or where people had to choose between it was definitely paranormal and you obviously imagined it. Real experiences are messier than that. People feel things they can't explain. People hear things, sense things, dream things, and carry those moments around for years because they don't know what to do with them. People walk into a place and feel a wave of emotion that doesn't seem to belong to them. They get responses that are just a little too exact to comfortably dismiss. That's the kind of thing I want this show to make room for. So if you spent this season with me, thank you, truly. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me explore the darker, stranger, more emotional side of these stories. Thank you for coming with me into places that still feel as though they're holding on to something. And if you've got a story of your own, I'd love to hear it. If there's a location you think I should cover, send it through. My inbox is always open on social media. If you've had an experience you still can't explain, send it through. And if there's a local haunting, a true crime case, a piece of folklore, or a place that has never sat right with you, I want to know about it. One of the best parts of doing this has been realizing how many people have been carrying a story around quietly, unsure of whether there's anywhere to tell it. I'd love this podcast to be one of those places. Now, even though this is the end of season 1, I'm not disappearing between seasons. There's still more coming before season 2 begins. I've got a special spotlight episode on the way with a guest I'm so excited to bring on to the show. There'll also be a special bonus plus a dispatch, because clearly I'm incapable of taking a quiet break when there are haunted places and strange stories still sitting there waiting for me. So while this chapter is wrapping up, the feed definitely isn't going silent. Once season 2 begins, we'll be opening with the quarantine station, which feels exactly the right place to start. It's a location shaped by isolation, fear, illness, and uncertainty, and it carries the kind of emotional weight that sits right at the center of what I've been exploring this season. Not long after that, I'll be stepping into the first True Crime Files case of the new season, the Wanda Beach murders. That's where the lens starts to widen. Season 2 still has haunted places and unexplained experiences, but it also moves further into the darkness people leave behind, not just in buildings, but in communities, in families, and in the aftermath of events that never truly stopped echoing. So if this season has been about what places hold on to, the next one asks a slightly different question. What happens when a haunting isn't only in the location, but in the story itself? This has been Deathly Curious Australia. I'm Monique. Thank you for spending this season with me. And until next time, stay curious, because some stories don't end when the people or places they belong to are gone.
Can feel I'm the thrill